All right, so the next thing we want to talk about are the 6 phases of transformation. And you can always, by the way, you can backtest this because you've probably already done this in your life in some form, way, shape, or form, personally and or professionally. Maybe it was physically, maybe you lost weight, maybe you got in better shape, maybe you went from never running to running a marathon, maybe you went from, a lot of you went from never being a recruiter to being a recruiter. Some of you might have gone from billing 100,000 a year to 300,000 a year. If you look at these are the steps. So step 1 is, I love this quote from Helen Keller, the only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. This is the #1 debilitator, I think, of any entrepreneur. I'll even take it out of the recruiting industry, is most of our visions are to survive the year. Now, no one writes it that way. I will have survived 2019, right? Or 2020, there's no like exciting passion about using your business as a vehicle to get you where you want to go. So in establishing a vision, you want to get crystal clear on what you want. This is from Think and Grow Rich. No one may achieve success without first knowing precisely what he wants. Study any person who is known to be a permanent success, and you will find that he has a definite major goal. He has a plan for the attainment of this goal. He devotes the major portion of his thoughts and his efforts to the attainment of this purpose. Every human being who reaches the age of understanding of the purpose of money wishes for it. Wishing will not bring riches, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches, and backing those plans with persistence, which does not recognize failure. I'm going to repeat that. Which does not recognize failure will bring riches. Many people try, say it didn't work, and move on. That's recognizing failure. So, so the question becomes, how do you determine what you really want? What's the, I'm going to give you an exercise in a few minutes. The income you want exactly, the client type you want. Is your niche the one you have fun recruiting in, or is it, it's not a niche you want to work in? And by the way, my conversation on niches, I don't think there's a bad niche out there right now. So I'm just saying, if you don't find it enjoyable, for example, I place salespeople, most of my, sales and marketing people and sales support most of my career. I tried engineering because I could get engineering openings with those same clients. I really didn't like placing engineers. No offense to anyone that does. I'm just not cut from the cloth to have a conversation all day long with people that are engineering types. So from a standpoint of defining what I really wanted in my niche, it was based on how I wanted to work and who I wanted to work with. And when you determine what you really want is, not just your niche, your role, your firm structure. If you could offload all the things that you find irritating, what would some of those things be? Once you establish the decision, then it's necessary to make a decision and a firm commitment. Commitment. One of them is from Napoleon Hill. One of the most common courses of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Mike, I tried getting a retainer. I had a conversation with somebody, and they just don't pay retainers. Now, I'm not saying that's not true. I've had conversations with as eloquent as I could have been and couldn't convince somebody to give me money up front. The good news is I chose not to work with them. I chose to continue marketing to find the person that would pay me a retainer. I made a decision and a commitment to take my business from contingency to retained, or at least my desk. My recruiters weren't as firm in that commitment as I was, but they, for the most part, when they took contingency business, they took good contingency business. My desk at my peak, $2,143,000, that was my billings, my best year. 97% of that engaged. 2 years before, it was only 10% engaged. And that's the result of making a decision and a commitment despite the people that told me they weren't going to pay a retainer. And it required me to fire a couple clients that were not performing well as contingency clients. So when you make a decision and a commitment, courage jumps in. And I said, I'm tired of being taken advantage of. And part of that came from frustration. So when you establish a decision, establish a vision and make a decision, you're going to have to enter courage. Fear is part of the process. Most of us spend a lot of our lives trying to eliminate fear. Fear tells you you're right on course. You're never going to do anything that's a challenge. So you're never going to do anything that's going to take you to the next level, if it's truly at the next level, without entering some form of fear. And when I just talked to a lot of people, they go, oh, but it's scary. I go, good, we know you're on track. Great success, this is Napoleon Hill again. The greatest success of most people comes with staying and sticking with their goals when defeat has overtaken them. And this is bluntly easier when you have, like for me, is to lean on a coach or a mentor to go, okay, I messed that up. And for them to see kind of like, if you're looking at my hand right now, you can see it on my left side of my face. I can't see it, but all of you, there's 30 of you who can see it, is what am I missing? I coach kids baseball. It's just, we were at practice the other day and, a kid goes, coach, watch me. What am I not doing? Because he can't see himself hit. The next phase of transformation is implementation. Doing what needs to be done, which follows through on making a decision. A decision without implementation is really not a decision or a commitment. Determination. Once one starts implementing, I promise you stuff like this is going to happen. A client is going to go into a hiring freeze. If you're trying to grow your business, a recruiter, maybe even a good one, is going to quit. Pestilence rains down on your family. I mean, I don't know why this happens. When I've made some decisions, people in my, simultaneously, something happened in my personal life that I had to tackle, completely unrelated to my decision. And these are the little tests, I think, that show up. When one chooses to transform, one is often tested. When I opened my business in 1990, I opened in March 1990. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, I believe, in August, and we were in recession by January 1. When I got off a desk in 2000, we went into a recession in 2001. When I decided to sell my business and start the coaching business, 08, 09, you all know what happened, right? So I lost about 40% of my assets that I had invested, at least on paper. Thank God I didn't sell. Those were all tests. It would have been easy in any one of those situations to revert back to what I was previously doing. But I said to myself, I've made a commitment to do this and I'm going to follow through on it. Before success comes, this is Napoleon Hill. So when I'm reading Napoleon Hill and he says he or man's, I'm quoting directly. Again, this was published in Think and Grow Rich, I think was published in the 20s or 30s. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. More than 500 of the most successful men in this country has ever known told the author, Napoleon Hill, their greatest success came just at one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. For me, that's that moment, one of those moments, the biggest moment, and probably out of all of them, is that moment I told you at the beginning of our event at in May 1991, where I was moments of, hours, if not moments away from shutting down. And if I shut down, obviously, none of us are here on this call today, but I just remember looking back at what the motivation was for me starting the business in the first place. And was I going to abandon that forever to take the easy way out and just to quit? And then the next step is stabilization. So things are going pretty good and you're happy. This is where most people stop. You wanted to build 200,000, you get to 200,000, you know, you follow the first 4 steps, and then maybe we vacation at our desk a little bit, right? You know, you have a big exhale, you hit your goal, and then you begin to erode the phenomenal habits you've developed because you haven't come up with the next, you haven't gone back to step 1 here, establish a new and bigger vision. And the reason people go, well, you know, when is it enough? And I'll share a quote with you from one of my mentors is, he goes, enough is selfish. I said, because I asked him, because he was pushing me. This is just a few years ago. I'd already sold my first business. I don't really need to work again. I'm growing my coaching business beyond whatever I thought was possible. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. Don't get me wrong. And I'm like, he's like, well, you know, let's kind of, what's the next big vision for you? And I go, well, when is it good enough? He goes, good enough is selfish. And he goes, Mike, if people are giving you money, that means you're helping them. And if you're helping them, you want to help more of them. And to not help people when you have the gift to help them is selfish. So it's the same thing in your recruiting business. If you're making placements, you're helping 2 people. You're helping build a company and you're helping someone transition in their career. And when it becomes enough, that becomes selfish. The other thing about enough is when you have enough, you're bored out of your mind. At least I am. When I get to the point where there's really no push to grow and I'm doing the same thing over and over again, or the same thing I did last year or the year before without adding challenge or technique, I get bored. So beyond stabilization, the next step is to optimize and expand. Optimize your existing structure, i.e. your sales process, your marketing techniques, hiring and onboarding, if that's a step for you. You can expand into new niches. You can expand into hiring somebody to recruit on your assignments. You can expand into, Eric, getting somebody to recruit for you so that all you do all day is talk to warm leads and then recruit on them. You know, and that can be part-time. I'm just picking on you in a fun way because you had the gall to volunteer and suffer my wrath. But I'm serious, like, you know, you might not know how right now, but I've done it on my own desk. Somebody said to me, I'm like, I have no time to market. And they're like, well, why don't you hire somebody to leave voicemails for you to get you leads? I'm like, I never thought of that. That's like a $10, $15 an hour activity if we tack on a bonus. So what does expanding look like for you? Could it even be into contract staffing? You know, whatever that is for you, those are the options. So what I want to do is, it's a 10:30 and I might be competing with your bladders and your morning coffee. First, any questions on this, then we'll take a break for about 10 minutes. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box. Puma, you wanted to chime in? Unmute yourself, which is lower left corner. I just saw that. If there's anything you wanted to, if you're there, have to unmute yourself. Great so far. Okay, I have no questions. So why don't we do this? It's 10:33.
Mike, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I actually wanted to chime in a while ago. There were, and I think it still makes sense maybe to kind of ask this question here, because maybe we'll cover it after lunch. But one of the things that Eric said earlier kind of resonated with me because I kind of feel the same way. When it comes to business development, I don't know if it's necessarily a belief, but the reality. And that is, I think in my personal situation, the industry that I work in automotive, has, and I don't want to say that it's become regulated, but it seems that automotive, doesn't matter if it's a tier 1 or a tier 2 supplier, they all kind of work the same way. And oftentimes, even though I've built credibility with an engineering manager, they'll just say, look, I'd love for you to work on it, but we have a process. You have to go through purchasing, you have to go through HR. And so at a certain point, I tried to structure my business development calls to start out with HR. and that didn't work very well. So what I've now started to do is change the structure of the call. I will leave voicemails. I kind of shake things up a little bit when I leave the voicemail, depending on who my audience is, whether it's an engineering manager or HR. But I think to your previous slide, so there's that belief slash reality, but then there's also I think the fear there, and for me the fear is I only have one shot at this. If I do get them on the phone and they say no, or I get, we only work with a select group of recruiters, or it's a once-a-year process, to vet new firms, things like that. I almost feel like I'm not going to get that shot again, or it's going to be months down the road, or I had the perfect candidate for that program management position. Now we have nothing. So, my goal, I definitely want to get more retainer business, but at the same point, I see a lot of value in my contingency business, because where I've had a lot of success is by getting a bridge of activity, working multiple functional type positions. That way I have one candidate that I might be able to place at 4 or 5 companies.
I don't want to go too deep on like exact techniques. I want to go back to that we were talking about, and I'm not saying that doesn't work. I'm just saying, well, one, I have a couple of clients in automotive, and the biggest thing where they got the biggest advice from me that had the greatest impact I can give you here in 30 seconds or less is go to smaller suppliers. I don't have a technique. Let's say it's General Motors. I know you're talking about suppliers, and General Motors is kind of the end users, or Ford for that matter. Going into there and saying, well, I want to work around HR, can it be done? Of course it can be done. I can build a skyscraper too if I really want to. Both are about the same amount of effort. So when you work with companies between like 10 million and $250 million in revenue, you eliminate a lot of that headwind. So what I would challenge you to do, because I never developed a way to target large corporations, because it's a royal pain in the butt. And I never chose to. I bet you if I did, there's probably a way to do it, and there's a way to get in there, and there's a way to be on the vendor system. I mean, I worked with companies like Cisco and Nortel, but I was brought in by clients from other companies that went over there and then pulled me in. And when I was pulled in as a source, I could negotiate terms that were favorable because I was known. But my target marketing was to companies in the tech space. It was startup to actually 100 million. Like I coach our clients to do is startup. So I would say, one, to reduce that friction is identify the third and fourth tier, maybe the supplier to the supplier is where you might find a lot more success. Because you're sitting there going, okay, you're looking at through the same prism with these same types of companies, and there probably are answers there, but those are the hardest answers. If I want to be a dude kind of in my automotive space, the path of least resistance is to a smaller size company. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate hearing that. And that's and I've never really marketed myself to the OEMs. It's always been the tier 1 and tier 2, even tier 3 suppliers. And, even some of the smaller companies, they'll come back and say, we don't have a recruiting budget, things like that. And that's fine. I know how to skirt around a lot of those type of answers and things like that. But
and then what you're going to hear on kind of the flip marketing call will help you, by the way, with the tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, if you want to stay that way. I'm not shooting on you. I won't spend the day shooting all over you, right? But my job is to give you alternate kind of strategies and tactics to make your life a little bit easier.
No, absolutely. And that's why, I decided to, invest in this session, because that's what I'm really hoping to get out of this is, try to go through some, real life scenarios. And, I'm reading a lot of the comments that everyone's putting here. And I think we all, to some degree, are going through the same issues, or we wouldn't be here.
Right.
So.
Okay. So thanks for the input. So mute your line, and then let's come back at 10:45. So 6 minutes from now. Just take a quick break, freshen up your coffee. and I'll see you then. Yeah, I consider a small firm to be a solo position. Probably, yeah, that's going to be too small, especially if they don't plan on expanding. I'm not going to target those people. You want to find your practices, your medical practices that are in the middle. I know more and more of them are getting acquired by hospital systems, but that's what a great job a researcher can do for you to help you identify that. All right, so let's go back to where we left off. And I want to kind of walk you through this exercise. Living a life of stress-free abundance. And just for those of you who just said in your head that's impossible, let's go to your belief systems. Here's my definition of it as it relates, at least as it relates to this morning's work. You earn enough to take care of your needs abundantly, more than enough to squeak by, without having to do the stuff that sucks in return. So those are the only two qualifiers I have for this. I'll say that again, earn enough to take care of your needs abundantly, which is more than enough to squeak by, without having to do the stuff that sucks in return. Because you could do an inventory, we're not going to do that today, but you could do an inventory of, just write a list of all the things you find irritating that have to get done. I'm just telling you there's someone else that'll do them for a fraction of what you make per hour, a tiny fraction of what you make per hour. And let's dig deeper what that looks like. It's certainty. Stress-free abundance is a level of certainty that you're getting the amount of money you need. Autonomy, you don't have to do what you don't want to do, i.e. working 90 hours a week, research. For me, it was taking data sheets, leaving voicemails, doing researches, et cetera, almost like Eric. You know, I hated leaving voicemails. I found, this is when it still worked, I found someone else to leave them for me. And that person generated about $400,000 in new business. And all I had to do was walk in and do what I did best, which was converting them from a prospect to a client. And what I would ask you to do is just take a minute while it's fresh in your mind and on one of these pages. What are some of the things, what are some for you? Put them in the chat box. What are some of the things you would do, stop doing, if there was a way you could figure out how not to do them anymore? You know, what are the things, and usually I use the word to look under emotionally irritating. And just pop some of those in chat. Get warm prospect to talk to me. Good. Making cold calls. Perfect. I got rid of that one. That's not the scope of this training, but there's ways to do it. Sourcing candidates from Will. Absolutely delegatable. And one of the things, there's a belief that we all have and carry with this, ladies and gents, is no one does it better than me. And the biggest thing I had to get over was having other people recruit candidates for my clients because I was who they hired until I found out I wasn't. My results were what they really hired, and then I figured out how to duplicate me and other people doing sourcing and building a database from Jen. That's a real pain in the butt. A researcher can do that. Finding someone to write content and make videos once my revenue supports this. Upwork.com is a whole bunch of people that you can find writers, you can find video editors. The retainer course a lot of you had was transcribed by, I did the content. The content's my technique, but it was transcribed by somebody else. It was filmed by somebody else and edited by somebody else. So I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but just so that you guys kind of get a feeling for everything that's been written here in the chat box so far, there's somebody else that can do it better than you. So the other thing is stress-free abundance is contribution, that we add so much value that we never have to worry about running out of business, having high turnover in our business with our clients or with our candidates. And abundance is a need versus a scarce versus need scarcity mindset. When I ask people a lot of times, why don't you do that? Well, I don't really need it. Really, other than food, warmth above freezing, access to money to pay for food and shelter, you don't need a lot. Look around, your office right now. Do you need, quote unquote, need any of it? When you think need, you're in a scarcity mindset. The trigger should be, this is where we go back to creating a vision. Really getting clear, we're going to do that in a minute, on what you want. These are things that at some level you want, but you suppress it. And one of the ways I suppressed it with myself, I shared with you earlier, is it's not worth it. I don't know. That looks neat. It's just not worth it. To test my money mindset, the biggest challenge I had that year was I was at a charity auction, and the opportunity to throw out and to bid on the opportunity to throw out the first pitch at Fenway Park. My son was 16. He's a pitcher on his high school team. And somebody said to me, that'd be a great 16th birthday present for your kid. And I said, you know what, it would. I said, but it's going to be really expensive. And as soon as that came to my mind, I remembered the commitment I made to myself. I want it, I have to buy it. So that was a 5-figure investment. And it was, granted, my kid got a lot out of it, and it's a life-altering memory. However, the biggest investment is that was one of the things that really capped for me walking out of a scarcity mindset into an abundant mindset. Because you know what, my life didn't change the next month. I could afford everything else I could afford the month before. So let's look at abundance. What you want is when you think of abundance, it's what you want versus what you think you can get. And write that down. Is this what I want or what I think I can get? Because it's under I think I can get if you use the word realistic. I want this, but that's not realistic. Or I want this, but who am I to get that much? If you bill $500,000 or $1 million in fee revenue, or if you build a $2 or $3 million search firm, you are serving a whole lot of people. You are providing a tremendous amount of benefit to the economy, and you're only capturing a fraction of it. So when we look at abundance, we're going to look at house, cars, kids, meals, fun trips, throw around money, savings, taxes, time. Don't worry, I'm going to give you kind of a minute here, and we're going to go through that in a little bit more. Because in the absence of a vision, whatever we teach you this afternoon, like I said this morning, is going to be less than likely to be implemented. So let's get you set up to abundantly cover your desire. With our clients, this is where we start. Then we stabilize them. Then we optimize and expand, i.e., expansion could be charity, community, second homes, semi-retirement. So let's look at what that looks like. So in your book, I just added this, by the way. Excuse me. So just find a blank sheet of paper. You won't find this. What would your house payment be in your ideal house? So just to give you a frame of reference, with current mortgage rates, $7,600 a month is about $1 million mortgage. So if you're thinking you want a $2 million house and you want a $2 million mortgage, it's 15 grand. This is where you not want to compromise. What is that? Imagine you might already be in the house you want. What you guys can't see over here is the Connecticut River. It looks like a lake. This was what I had in my mind's eye for 20 years before I got it. And it was to have an office that overlooked the water. So what is it for you? What would that payment be? So we want to get what we talked about before. For those of you who want to go, a lot of you again wrote about $500,000 in revenue, 400,000 in revenue. If you don't backfill that with, and it doesn't just have to be material things, you're significantly reducing the likelihood that it will occur. So cars, what are the types of cars you wanted? think about probably a $60,000 vehicle, $75,000 vehicle is probably $1,000 a month on a lease, just to give you some price points. Kids, are you saving for their college tuition, sports, activities you do as a family? And this would be monthly amounts, by the way. So I want you to stick to this to monthly amounts, because you can compute this then, especially when we do metrics after lunch, into monthly income. Meals, this doesn't just mean groceries. Is what do you want to spend per month on going out? To the places you want to go, not to the places that are good values. Now, those might be the places you want to go, and if that's the qualifier, perfect. Think about that. How much would you spend every month if you could on meals? Fun trips, fun money, throw around money, just because you want it. Stuff, coach bags, Super Bowl tickets, World Series tickets. Like for me, when I started doing this, when I started going through this exercise, whenever, I'm a New England sports fan, so Patriots, Red Sox, I go to conference championship games, I go to World Series games, and I don't look at the price tag. And nothing, and the world hasn't come to an end. Savings. This should be one of your biggest savings goals, one of your biggest goals. The most probably productive exercise I ever had was sitting down with a financial advisor in the late 90s and saying, here's the lifestyle I want to lead 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I want to be able to leave the recruiting business in 2008. And it wasn't that I didn't like it. I just wanted to have the option. How much money do I have to put away to be able to live off that with conservative investments? How much money do I have to put away in the next 10 years? And so that I can work on a job, I can take any job I want regardless of what it pays. And again, my motive wasn't to leave the business in 1998. My motive was to create options. Combined with when I sat down in 1998, I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a child that wasn't born yet. So it was also kind of the tuition payment. This clarity provided me a huge, huge motivator. Because especially for those of you who are doing pretty well, if you're not clear on this, then what's going to happen is time's going to pass and you might be disposing your current income and not investing it, not having a real target. So you take the total of all that and then, kind of gross it up times 1.65 for taxes gives you kind of the amount of money you need after your business expenses to be able to, that should be your target. And what I would challenge you to do on each one of these is create images around them and pictures. Like imagine yourself at these restaurants. Imagine yourself in the house. What do those fun trips look like? What are those cars actually? And there might be one in here I kind of left out because with some people, there might have been a number 6.5 under savings is debt reduction. Some people, when we meet them, have credit card debt, things like that. So any questions on any of that, put them up in chat. Everyone's good? No questions? This is what we're talking about as it relates to the vision part of your life. As Helen Keller said, the only thing worse than having no sight is having no vision. And if you're at all stuck or frustrated, my gut feeling is without having a one-on-one conversation with you, a lot of it might wrap around having, not having a lot of clarity around what you want.